Hey, everybody. Grant Miller here, Miami Community News. I'm with Brittany Morgan with the Miami Foundation. A lot of people don't know what Miami Foundation. There's 3 million people. The foundation been around
56 years.
56 years. Who founded it?
That's an excellent question. So the Miami Foundation came about in the 60s. Actually, it was a cabal of bankers who wanted to make sure that they were investing back into Miami's nonprofit and philanthropic community. A couple of more legislation pieces were passed in the 80s that made it favorable for donors to house their funds at the Miami Foundation. And so we're what you call a community foundation. We often serve as a clearinghouse for donor advised funds and other fund holders who maybe want to give their money philanthropically but don't know where or how, so they entrust us with that.
They don't know how.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we do with our knowledge of the IRS code and also our deep expertise about nonprofit partners, we can help make those connections for us or for them.
The first time I really got to understand Miami Foundation when Ruth Shack was.
Yeah, she's a legend.
She is a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she decided to run against Steve Clark, the mayor of Dade County. And then when that happened, next she became the foundation person.
Mm-hmm.
She had all these eyeballs on the Miami Foundation.
Yes.
So how many organizations do you guys help?
That's a great question. Each year, we partner with approximately 1,000 nonprofits through either grants or their participation in Give Miami Day, which is what most people know the Miami Foundation for.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Give Miami Day.
Yeah, Give Miami Day is an all-day hands-on fundraiser for Miami's nonprofit community of more than 1,000 organizations to generate donations. Oftentimes, it's costly for an individual organization to fundraise. So what we do is we deploy our resources to have a crowd-raising event. And this past year, we closed $32 million to those 1,000.
At one time.
$32 million distributed to 1,000 nonprofits on one day of giving.
You know, you make a very good point. A lot of nonprofits, everybody's nonprofit, but the real nonprofits don't know how to raise money because they're doing the
good work,
the good deeds, and they get very confused and they don't know how to ask for money. Give Miami just says, here it is.
Here's the platform.
Amazing. So your title is?
I'm the Economic Resilience Director. So I'm actually a part of a new unit at
In English, what's that mean?
That means that we're trying to spur economic development.
Are you sure you're from Miami? You sure talk like a New Yorker. You're quick.
Bueno, I could throw in a couple buenos and peros if that would seal the deal. Yeah, que bola. So born and raised Miamian, but really this investment is a moment to kind of see what happened in the pandemic and act accordingly. We saw that the pandemic disproportionately affected Black and Latino small businesses. You know how many of them are rejected from the first round of paycheck protection. It was estimated that in 2020, over 40% of Black businesses nationally had to close their doors. So the role of an economic resilience director is to make sure that we are investing in those small businesses that made Miami what it is today.
You know, when COVID hit, I was on a panel. I'll say it's 5 people, but it probably was 50 because all was by Zoom. And Marco Rubio was on there, Senator Rubio. So people were talking about all the things. And I said, Senator, this package, unless you do your paperwork right, you can't get it. I said, Senator. And I started naming stores near his home.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this one on 57th Avenue. I said, the grandmother is doing the bookkeeping by hand.
Correct.
How do we help them?
Correct.
Because people that know how to do it know how to do it. People don't know, don't have the machine to do it.
Exactly. And I'll liken an analogy back to Give Miami Day. You know, if you're a well-resourced nonprofit, you have a development director, you have a list of major donors. The same corollary extends to our small businesses, like you mentioned. Like maybe they're not accepting card transactions yet. Maybe they don't have a Google Maps page. And so it's really my role to use the donation that we received from Wells Fargo for $20 million to direct those.
That just came through.
Yes, we received that at the beginning of last year. That is for Miami-Dade County.
Gene Schaefer team, right? Yes. He's the big dog there.
There's a lot of individuals at Wells Fargo to whom this grant is attributable. I will say a big thank you to Leo Toka, Hector, and also Pat Morris, who's now with the Miami-Dade County government. They played a big role in making sure that the Miami Foundation was the beneficiary for this grant.
Oh, that's a huge one. It's important. So how do you reach out to the minorities? How do you do that?
That's a really great question.
It's
so
tough.
the Miami Foundation was actually chosen because of our deep relationships with nonprofits. If we have a web of 1,000 nonprofits, we already know who's doing the small business work in Alapata, who's doing the Black-owned business work in Overtown. So by extension, we are partnering with trusted community organizations who know who those small businesses are who could benefit from this work. And so we also go out to events. Just this morning, I was out at Alpha Omega Church for 3 hours delivering information about the program in Spanish to entrepreneurs who have never heard of this ever. Most entrepreneurs don't even know that you can get a grant. They're so accustomed to taking on loans. So that's one of the things that's very unique about this program.
Wow. And how long have you been doing this?
So I've actually been in the small business space for about 3 years, but I've been working in community economic development for over a decade. Different issue areas, all the way from food security, first generation student success, and now minority small business.
There's a thing going on called Open for Business.
Yeah, that's us.
It's pretty exciting because it sends a lot of messages. And what is the message that you want people to know about?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And that name actually comes from Wells Fargo itself. So Miami isn't doing this alone. There are 5 cities in the United States that are all open for business, made possible with $20 million each.
All from Wells Fargo.
Exactly. So going back to PPP, actually, Wells Fargo made some money on processing paycheck protection loans as a servicer from the federal government. They were paid for that. And rather than
all banks did.
All banks did, exactly. That's an excellent point, Grant, because all banks made...
Finally, I got one good point.
One good point. All of the banks made that money, but Wells Fargo's small business philanthropy team raised their hand and said, you know what, not only we're going to give it back, we're going to give it to diverse entrepreneurs, and they took the stand of asset building. So these grants and loans can only help you to buy assets. And what are fixed assets? This podcast equipment, tables, chairs, machinery, vehicles. And you know what? We took it a step further by enabling entrepreneurs to buy their own commercial real estate.
Alex, can you put this on a feeder? How can people find this?
Yeah, that's a great question. MiamiOpenForBusiness.org, MiamiOpenForBusiness.com, Miami Open for Business in your search browser.
You got one of them? Put it on a feeder across the bottom.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, you're trying to reach people of color. Whether they're immigrants, lived here forever, it doesn't matter.
Those are great questions, and those are things that we ask about in the application. So to be eligible, your business just has to be led by somebody who is Black, Latino, LGBTQ, a veteran, or a person with disabilities, because we know statistically that entrepreneurs who are of those identity facets struggle harder. It's harder for them to get a commercial bank loan approved. It's harder for them to have large revenues. But then we take that a step further, because in Miami, not all of those groups are created equally. I mean, speaking firsthand as a white Cuban, we know that there are some nationalities. Hold up.
You speak Spanish?
I do, fluently.
And you went to Chicago?
I did.
So I have to jump around. I heard Jose Mas speak last week.
Yeah.
And his speech was incredible. And he told people, the 400 people that was listening to him, think like an immigrant. Think like a first-time immigrant.
Scrappy.
Right. And that was last week, and I tell the story all the time. The first-time immigrants, they're working harder than anybody.
That's right.
They're trying to, they're here for a reason, and so your target is people of color.
Absolutely. And you know what? 80% of small businesses self-fund. That means that they never take on a bank loan. They never have a friends and family around.
They can't get a loan.
That too. But also there's a cultural expectation around debt. Why would I take on debt to invest in my business? So if 80% of small businesses are self-funding, what do you think that looks like for entrepreneurs of color, immigrant entrepreneurs, right? So you have a point. We are trying to make this information accessible. We're trying to explain why a debt or taking on a loan would actually be beneficial for your business in the long run. Because I can guarantee you their counterparts, their non-Hispanic counterpart businesses, they're taking on loans, they're repaying them, they're building their business credit, and we just want that same success for them as well.
Do a lot of the people that you're trying to reach think it's a trick?
That's such a good question, because again, I'm coming off the heels of 3 hours of networking, and somebody looked at me and I said the word grant, and I said the word grant in 5 different ways, and they're like, well, what do you mean? I don't have to repay this? Like, a lot of people think it's simply too good to be true. I think unfortunately, there are a lot of lenders out there that are charging astronomical interest rates. I've heard of
You don't know that because they spread the interest rate over.
Exactly. And they also start to debit your account automatically if you're not in compliance with that loan. So I've heard of entrepreneurs who will have their accounts debited daily to repay an extractive loan. And so I can't fault people for, having that risk aversion, but what we're trying to do is democratize access to finance, make it so that people can get a grant and get a loan when maybe somebody else might have told them no in the past.
Alex, can you run that across the bottom for more information? There we go. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's great. That'll take you to the right spot.
Okay. Do we look okay? I'm giving you a hard time.
As long as the information's right, that's most
all that
important
matters
to me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get a little history about you. So you grew up in Miami, then you went to University of Chicago.
I did.
In Cook County.
I did.
And you got your master's there too?
I did.
All at the same time?
I took a break. I worked for 6 years before going back to get my master's. I thought it was really important to have some exposure to the issue area. I worked in the food banking sector for actually
Where?
At Feeding America for 6 years.
In which city?
In Chicago, all in Chicago. Wow. Yeah, Feeding America is actually the nation's largest charity in terms of amount of revenue and
so
donations.
you're there when the President Obama was, right?
Yeah.
That was his hometown then.
Yes, I also went to I lived like 2 doors down from his house, and every time
Wait, in Chicago?
Yeah, in Hyde Park specifically. Yeah, he's very affiliated with the South Side and specifically Hyde Park. So yeah, there's a lot of.
So you went to his inauguration? Did you?
I didn't, but I did go to. I was there the night he was elected in Grant Park.
Wow,
Yeah.
Was it crazy?
It was absolutely insane.
I went to his inauguration. I was in the front 50,000.
I did like that it was open to everybody. You
Yeah.
know, the effervescence at Grant Park that evening. It's a night I'll remember. You know, taking the bus home back to the South Side, like it was a moment to remember, and it's something that will live with me.
Chicago is a fun town. I lived in Milwaukee for a while.
Yeah, so similar.
So I used to take the train down.
Yeah.
So how'd you go from Chicago to Miami?
You know, that's an excellent question. Since I left in 2008, I've been wanting to come back. I actually lost my abuela in 2018, who was a small business owner herself.
What kind of business?
She owned a clothing store on US 1, a couple blocks from this location. And I
Wait.
Yeah.
Where?
On US 1 in like 70, 60 something. Sunnyland Plaza. Yeah. And so
I hear that accent now.
Yeah.
Sunnyland Plaza, not Sunnyland Shopping Center, the plaza.
Correct.
The small one.
Yes.
What was it called?
Sizes Plus. And, you know, watching her.
That was right on US 1.
Yeah, it was right on US 1, facing US. Watching her as a Cuban immigrant, the only reason that I've experienced the economic privilege that I have is because of her, right? She was a small business owner. Somebody took a chance on her. She was successful.
Well, when you say somebody took a chance on who?
So
I don't need a name, but a company.
So she used to work in the department stores when she came from Cuba as an individual buyer. And there was a mentor who took her under their wing and said, you know what, you're doing this for our department store, but I think you could do great on your own. She actually became independent and flew back and forth from New York City with all of these clothing wares, got the connections to those retail or wholesale buyers to open her own retail storefront. And so
that store's not around anymore.
No, it is not. So my grandmother passed away. You know, she sold the store. Being so far from the people I love and the place I call home for over a decade was very challenging. And then Wells Fargo, you know, gave this grant to the Miami Foundation, and the Miami Foundation was looking for somebody who understands South Florida's small business ecosystem, who is bilingual.
That's an interesting ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because it is another world. And people don't realize, you know, we have 1,000 customers, from the one who rents $300 to $400 to the littlest store. So we understand the ecosystem. I like that word, ecosystem, and how important it is to, you know, our motto is buy local, shop local.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you know, I tell people, if you buy coffee at Starbucks, that profit is going to Seattle.
Correct.
Yeah, the employees are here.
Or the Bahamas. Who knows where they're incorporated.
Right. Whatever I said, but it's not staying here. So when you buy from a small local business owner, you're supporting our whole community, not the big thing. So and that's important to keep our ecosystem. I like that.
Exactly. And when we talk about an ecosystem, it needs to have a diverse set of entrepreneurs, right? If we were just a town with large chains, right?
Some cities.
Exactly. And as some cities are slowly turning into, that ecosystem won't thrive. You can't have an ecosystem that's all coral and no fish, for example. So another aspect of Miami Open for Business is we want there to be business diversity, right? A lot of things are turning into tech or tech enabled, but someone still has to cut your hair. You got to take your clothes to the dry cleaner. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that cultural fabric and the diversity of businesses that have existed in Miami can continue to thrive, and that we don't just become a segment of the economy that's very, you know, focused on one or two industries. A lot. It's a lot to think about.
Suave. Okay. How long have you been with the foundation?
I've just closed 1 year at the Miami Foundation.
Now, have you gone to small businesses, literally just going to small businesses, not going, talking to them about the foundation, and they go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, Grant, because that's actually how this program was designed. So we have these guardrails from Wells Fargo, 20 million diverse entrepreneurs, asset building. But before we rolled out any financial products in the market, we sat with the ecosystem, but also the small business owners. So last year—
When you say we, who's we?
Myself and some colleagues from the foundation, our managing director of Collective Impact, our VP of Community Investments. We were really encouraged to not just roll something out without conferring with the people who would be affected.
So where'd you go?
So I sat down to breakfast with some folks participating in the Scale Up cohort at Miami-Dade College. Another touch point I've had is
Which college?
Miami-Dade College.
Which one?
Oh, the Idea Center operates out of their downtown Wolfson campus. Okay. And so they bring entrepreneurs from all over, for instance, the county to come through their programming. I also sat in on some trainings for women, specifically Black women entrepreneurs and founders in the manufacturing space who are looking to manufacture their goods at scale, and really ask people point blank, what is the market missing? If you could control these dollars, what would you make sure that we underwrite? And that's a big reason why we rolled out with this commercial real estate down payment assistance product. We have heard story after story about small businesses who are being pushed out of their leased facilities due to rent hikes, whose maybe negligent commercial landlords are letting the dilapidation of that facility affect their business, and some folks who have been renting without a lease for 16 years. So they've been renting for over a decade and have no equity, right, and nothing to show for it.
Well, that's not just minorities, or it's for everybody, you know.
That is an issue that faces everybody, but it disproportionately faces minority entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs.
Is it because where they're located?
You know, there's actually a couple reasons why people think this is. There's some great studies from the Federal Reserve, for example, that small business owners of equal credit worthiness are denied differentially on the basis of race. And so there's a lot of things that the underwriting sector could potentially be doing differently. Over reliance on credit scores, for example, moving to more revenue-based underwriting. Those have all been proposed as ways to make sure that there's more access to capital for minority entrepreneurs, and so that biases, whether overt or subjective, don't get in the way of lending.
I'm just curious. I'm sure the foundation will do it. If they don't do it, they'll do it after today. I think they should have a walking campaign. You know, when newly elected mayors or different areas, they go knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things the foundation could do, because you got people coming into Miami-Dade, but not everybody hears that.
Correct.
And it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to reach them.
Yes, it absolutely is, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because the Miami Open for Business program has a place-based component. So there are a couple neighborhoods in Miami-Dade where we've decided to double down, but we know that we can't be there all the time.
Like where?
So from the bottom to the top: Miami Gardens, Opa-locka, North Miami Beach, Overtown, Allapattah, Liberty City, and Little Haiti. We recently added West Coconut Grove to that list based on feedback from our constituents. And then all the way in the bottom of the map, Richmond Heights, Homestead, Leisure City, Naranja, et cetera. And we know that we can't be there all the time, right? So what we've done is we've contracted with 8 different community-based providers.
Like who? Like what?
So for instance, the Allapattah Collaborative CDC is doing incredible work in the small business resilience and anti-displacement space.
And Allapattah, it's getting so expensive.
Correct.
The landlord's going, I want you out so I can build.
Exactly. So Allapattah is one of the recipients of our commercial real estate product. We are extending to them $500,000 to be able to purchase one of the buildings on the 17th Avenue corridor so that they can own it. And it is a piece of ownership. One of the fastest ways to experience wealth and generational wealth in particular is through assets. Usually it's real estate, usually it's your home. What we're trying to do is make that happen on the commercial front. So we know we can't be in all these cities and we can't all these municipalities, and that we can't knock on the doors ourselves, but we have 8 trusted providers.
That's good.
Yeah.
You brokered people to get out there.
Absolutely.
So it looks like you're concentrating Northeast Dade, working your way down.
Yeah, we have kind of, I would say, 8 to 9 community areas, depending on how contiguous you treat them. And we didn't make up that list ourselves either. We started with the Miami-Dade County's list of targeted urban areas that came about with the community redevelopment agencies, the CRAs that exist. We did stakeholder interviews with each of those communities to say, you know, is this a corridor that's ripe for further development? Is there a small business backbone entity? And that's where we made those decisions about where to invest.
Some cities have property and they give very slighted rent for these businesses. Like South Miami has it. They have like 4 tenants in one of their buildings. Give them slighted rent to help them keep their business going. So it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that sounds like a great initiative. I mean, I can't speak for all of them. These municipalities are so different. Some of them also are within the city of Miami limits, so they're all going to operate very idiosyncratically. But what we want to make sure is that where there's going to be a preponderance of Black and Latino and other minority groups of entrepreneurs, that we're there with resources to help them as well. And it's not just the capital products, it's also about knowledge and resource. We talked earlier about social networks, we talked earlier about underwriting. How is somebody going to put together financial projections for the first time if they don't have somebody to help them? So we're investing in those 8 organizations to do what's called in the small business ecosystem technical assistance. It really means business advising, support, workshops, etc. They're not just going to be prepared to apply for our grants, but any grant that comes down the pike.
I was at the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, Eric Knowles.
Fantastic individual. They're a great supporter of ours.
And I was at, I forget the name, Junior's, a restaurant. And they were just talking about, not about Miami Foundation, but everything about small businesses.
Yeah.
He must have had 60 people in the room. And he brought people in to talk about grants.
Yes.
And it's important because he has, Miami-Dade Chamber has large businesses
Correct.
and a lot of small businesses in the inner city, and it was enlightening that they're trying it and they're trying to make it work. So hats off to Eric and his team.
And I have to give additional hats off to Eric. So they've been our partner from day one. They stood with us at the launch event, and then last Friday at the annual luncheon for the Miami-Dade Chamber, we actually received their large nonprofit of the year award.
I didn't see you.
I didn't see you either. I was curious you mentioned that. We went up on stage.
No, but that was not at that event.
This is the annual luncheon.
Yeah,
business symposium.
Mr. Miller spoke. The new Beacon Council.
Correct, Roger.
You know, we're related. He's 6'5", I'm 5'6".
Same last name.
Same last name.
And Wells Fargo was acknowledged alongside
this
that as well.
This was 2 weeks before at a restaurant. He does it. I think they meet every Thursday.
Every Thursday morning, they have an informal breakfast meetup.
That's where I was there. That meeting, and it was another one at Florida Memorial. Yeah, I was at his.
They've also been retained. They are our Miami Gardens and Opa-locka provider, and so they would have great relationships with the businesses in that corridor. And they are one of those 8 organizations I spoke about.
The mayor of Miami Gardens. They went from Shirley Gibson, who was outstanding, to Oliver Gilbert, who was unbelievable. And the new mayor, Mayor Harris, he's taken it to a new level. And Miami Gardens is growing so quickly.
They are.
And there are so many small businesses there.
Yes.
That are minority run that are struggling because they don't know how to do. You know, okay, I got space. All right, I paid rent. Now what do I do?
Yeah. And that's where organizations like the Miami-Dade Chamber come in handy. You know, we're out here administering these grant and loan programs, but we can't necessarily sit with every single entrepreneur to look at their cash flow, understand their financial positioning. And so that's why we love folks like, you know, the Chamber, Alapata CDC. I'll also mention we're working with branches in the North Miami community. They're experts in delivering that type of what we call technical assistance. Yeah, branches. They've been around for a very long time.
Right.
Anti-poverty,
Well, they do
services.
a lot of daycare, aftercare too.
Yeah, they serve the entire family from youth all the way through entrepreneurs. Their micro business program is pretty excellent. And what we also love about all these providers is that they have services available in Spanish, English, and Haitian Creole, making sure that people who maybe don't speak English can get information.
What did you say, Haitian?
Haitian Creole.
Okay, all right. It's Creole.
Yeah.
So, do you know how that language started? You should. That's a good one. Google that one.
Well, I don't use the word Creole because, you know, Creole refers to a variety of Creolized languages.
Right, but there's French and there's Creole, but they started Creole another day.
A story for another time.
Yes. So it's exciting. I think a lot of great things are happening. Thanks for the Miami Foundation. So people could go to that webpage. Could you put it back up, Alex? And people could go there and find out more about the Miami Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, before we wrap, I'll just want to make sure we talk about all of the products. I've talked about our commercial.
You're going to.
Our commercial real estate down payment assistance product is amazing, right? It's $500,000 for real estate that you'll own and put in your own name. But not everyone's ready for that, right? That's like the big kahuna, the Cadillac, if you will. We also offer grants for people to buy technology and equipment. So let's say this podcast material, let's say you want to buy a commercial oven to really level up your business. Maybe you need 10 barbershop chairs. We give a grant for people to buy those assets outright. We also have a loan that folks can take on, and get this, the interest rate is 3%. It's a 3% interest loan.
What's the interest rate now?
Oh gosh, floating is, we're looking at anywhere from 7 to 12.
Right,
and
so.
Exactly. And some individuals who maybe might not be creditworthy in a bank's eyes, they're actually ironically charged more interest, even though they might be less able to afford it. And so you can take on that 3% interest loan to finance a vehicle, to finance inventory, to finance the purchase of remodeling and renovation needs. But what's really cool is also if you've ever considered converting your business to a worker-owned enterprise, which is very popular elsewhere in the United States, you can do that with our financing.
Do you have any particular client that you go, we did this, we helped them? There's anybody that you work with and go, wow.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, I love to spotlight the commercial real estate ownership opportunity because there's nothing like this that exists
is there
in
one
Florida.
Is there one you want to talk about?
So the three gentlemen who are co-owning property together, it's a requirement that the real estate be collectively owned. The co-founder of Invisio, which is an outsourced IT managed solutions company, the general contractor for Zia Construction, and the lead architect of Building Center number 3. These three individuals are coming together and they're going to own property for the first time in their businesses' careers. They're highly successful. Invisio provides the IT services for some of South Florida's largest nonprofits. The architect is award-winning, but they have regularly been booted out of space after space due to the rent hikes. I mean, 40% of an increase in your rent, that's unsustainable for any successful business. And
Any business.
So these three individuals, they've known each other for over a decade, and they're coming together to purchase real estate for the first time, made possible by an investment.
Are these
in our
local
program.
guys?
Yeah, of course. So the three of them met. I believe at least 2 out of the 3 are originally from Antigua, have been in Miami for a decade and a half. Their businesses are wildly successful. They have, you know, great products, great clients, and it's really the least that we could do is to give them a home to call their own.
Where's that home?
It's going to be in Alapata.
Alapata, not everybody knows where that is.
Yeah.
That's where the original farmers markets were.
It is, yeah.
And
It's
there's a barbecue place right in one of those.
Yes.
What's it called? Do you know?
I don't remember the name of it. I'm familiar with a couple of
But that's where all the produce in Dade County
Correct.
would go there and then be
Correct.
sorted out to go out.
Correct.
And
there's still some vestiges of that. For instance, in the Tropicana flea market, which suffered a tremendous fire last year, we actually supported those flea market vendors to recover from that fire with Open for Business funds. But Alapata is the subject of a lot of speculation and encroachment right now.
Well, and top of it all, people, if you don't know where that is, it's close to Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little north of there.
We'll like to say it's west of Wynwood and I-95, but east of kind of that medical district in Spring Garden.
Oh, right. It's called Spring Garden.
Yeah.
So it's exciting what the Miami Foundation's done and going to do.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, there's no top yet, is there?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, this initiative is time-bound by virtue of the Wells Fargo grant. It is technically a 3-year program, and we're going to distribute all $20 million when it's said and done. But I think the one area for opportunity would be moving public policy forward. You know, during this conversation, we've spoken about negligent commercial landlords. We've spoken about underwriting practices. We've talked about code, right, and how municipalities can make it friendlier for small businesses to operate. In order to truly have that thriving ecosystem that we spoke about, the corals, the fish, the seawater, we need to make sure that it's easier from a policy perspective for these businesses to thrive. And so there's one thing that we'll want to do in addition to distributing all these grants and loans is maybe advocate and have small business owners advocate for policies that are friendlier for them. You know, I love a good big box retailer as much as the next person, but without our dry cleaners, without our nail salons, our hair cutteries, you know, we run the risk of losing what made Miami great. And so,
well, we are. If Miami is in the top 2 or 3 of small businesses in the country, am I correct?
It is said to be the most entrepreneurial city in the United States, and about more than half of the labor force actually works at a small business.
Yeah, it's you know, big boxes too, but I don't go to them.
I try not to. Yeah,
it's like I go to a grocery store.
Yeah,
I go to Milam's.
That's great.
That's locally owned. Navarro's locally owned.
Exactly.
You shop at these there's nothing wrong with Publix and Winn-Dixie, but as you know, if you go into Publix and Winn-Dixie, they have changed their policy. If you look in their fruit, it tells you where it's from. So we need to buy Miami products.
That's right.
Or at least South Florida products.
That's right.
And it helps the small businesses. And when you're driving by, you see, I'm an ice cream person, by the way. I eat ice cream. I can tell you every locally owned ice cream in Dade County.
That's great. Yeah.
Are you an ice cream person?
I am, and I recently went to the one outside of Sunset with my family. And
that's Whip and Dip.
Yeah, yeah.
Locally owned.
Exactly.
Or you go to 8th Street, Azuka.
Yes.
Locally owned.
Yes, it
is.
is.
Or you go to, if you're in, as you call it, Miami Gardens, have Ice Cream Heaven. Mm-hmm. Or if you go to Hialeah, Charlie's Ice Cream.
Mm-hmm. I live right by Charlie's, actually.
No way.
Yeah. I'm in the Miami Springs area, so big fan of Milam's as well.
And every store at Milam's has the family members there.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I'll just, agree with what you said wholeheartedly. Anytime people go out of their front door to procure goods, whether it's party supplies, groceries, greeting cards, just think about how you can maybe be putting your dollar back into your local economy, getting to know your neighbors at one of these establishments. And so wholeheartedly agree. And if there's one thing we could all do together, whether or not you're eligible for the program, is to buy local, support local, and give back local.
All right, people, if you have any questions, go to MiamiOpenForBusiness.com. I'll give you all the information about your organization.
That's right.
Brittany, as always, it's a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody, have a great day.